This video will focus on Chapter 4, Planning and Conducting Experiments. We will use an example to go along with the terms we are reviewing, but I won't read the context out loud, so pause the video if you need more time to read it. This is an experiment because an observational study observes individuals and measures variables of interest, but it does not attempt to influence the responses. On the other hand, an experiment deliberately imposes some treatment on individuals to measure their responses. When we want to determine a cause and effect relationship, we must conduct an experiment. The question is it a good experiment? A well-designed experiment must first utilize comparison. Comparison is when you compare the results of two or more treatments. In this case, our treatments would be Magic Potion A and Magic Potion B, and we are comparing the results of each potion. Next, a good experiment must have random assignment, where chance is used to assign treatments to experimental units. It creates roughly equivalent groups by balancing out the effects of other variables. Does our experiment utilize random assignment? Yes, it does. We assign treatment to the puppers, our experimental units, by flipping a coin, which is a chance process, so we have random assignment. Our experiment is also a matched pairs assignment, because we have a pair of puppers, and one half of the pair gets one treatment, and the other half of the pair gets the other. The next characteristic of a good experiment is control, meaning that we have to keep all other variables that might affect response the same for all groups, which our experiment fulfills. Doing this will help prevent confounding, which is when you can't tell if the response variable changes because of one variable or the other. Lastly, a well-designed experiment must be replicable. This means that enough experimental units are used in each group so that the differences in the effects of the treatments can be differentiated from chance differences between the two groups. In our case, 15 puppers are receiving each treatment, so we will say that is enough to fulfill the requirement. Now let's explore some of the other experimental designs. First, there's the completely randomized design. This is when treatments are assigned to all experimental units completely by chance. If necessary, pause the video to read the example below. Furthermore, we could also use a randomized block design. In a randomized block design, the experimental units are divided into blocks, or groups with similar characteristics. This helps reduce confounding. The random assignments for treatments are then carried out within each block. Here's an example below. Pause if you want to read it. Control groups are another factor that are sometimes utilized in experiments. A control group is used for comparison and usually receives no treatment. Here's an example below. Some puppers could receive a vial of sugar water instead of a treatment. This is a placebo or fake treatment. If they still sprout wings, then the placebo effect has happened, where puppers simply sprout wings because they think it will happen. In order to eliminate the placebo effect, we can make a blind experiment. There are two types of blinding, single and double. In a single blind experiment, only one party, either the experimenter or the subject, knows who is receiving which treatment. In a double blind, neither the experimenter nor the subject knows which treatment was given. Here are some examples. Now, our experiment could run into some problems due to bias. One of the sources of bias is undercoverage, which is essentially when you're unable to get certain members of a population to participate, so they aren't well represented in the experiment. Next is non-response bias, which is when individuals chosen for the sample can't be contacted or refuse to participate. Response bias is when there's a problem with the measurement process and results in a systematic pattern of incorrect samples. An example of something that could cause response bias is wording of question. The results of an experiment are statistically significant when the difference in the response is too large to be accounted for by simply the random assignment of experimental units to treatments. From a statistically significant result, we can conclude causation. Here's an example below. Some common mistakes include that experimental units are not always individuals, because if we were to assign treatments, for instance, to classrooms and compare the results of the classrooms against each other, the classrooms and not the individual students would be the experimental units. An experiment does not have to use random sampling in order to be well designed, but if an experiment does not use random sampling, you can only make conclusions about cause and effect and not about the population sampled. Don't just stick to a completely randomized design when making an experiment. There will be situations in which designs such as a randomized block design will be better suited. Here's how to use a TI Inspire to generate random numbers. Begin by typing randseed into your TI Inspire, and then type in a few random numbers and click enter. Then type randint into the calculator followed by parentheses. Type the range you want your numbers to be generated from, with a comma separating the two numbers. Click enter and a number will be generated. Lastly, here's a practice AB problem to go over the topics we just mentioned. Thank you for watching.